Hi there. It's November the 18th, and in our journey through the prophecies of Ezekiel, in Hebrew Ezekiel, meaning God will strengthen, we come to chapters 37 and 38. Chapter 37 of Ezekiel is perhaps most strongly pictorial of all of the chapters in the book, and it commences with Ezekiel being carried by the Spirit or the wind to a valley plain of dry bones. Now I say valley plain because it seems to be an open space, a place where there's been a battle. It's not a ravine, a narrow gorge. It's an open place. There's been a battle there, and bones are spread all over the place. And the Spirit of God asks Ezekiel, can these bones live? And Ezekiel doesn't say no, they're completely dead. He puts his faith in God and he says, oh God, you know, you're the one who has the capacity to bring these back to life. And then the Lord invites Ezekiel to prophesy, to speak out God's word, to speak out God's life into these bones. And as he does so, an amazing thing happens. The bones come together, they knit together. Not only that, but flesh comes on the bones, sinews come on the bones. They stand up, a very great army, says Ezekiel. But one thing is very clear about these bodies that are now standing, this army that is now standing. They do not have life within them. They don't have breath within them. And therefore the Spirit God instructs Ezekiel to prophesy to the spirits or the winds. The word it uses here is to prophesy to the four winds, the ruchot in Hebrew, from ruach, meaning spirit or wind. And so Ezekiel prophesies to the winds, and he calls for the Spirit to come and fill these ones who are standing up with life. We think back perhaps to the creation of the world and to the creation of man, when God breathed into him and he became a living being, a living spirit, a living soul. And so God breathes in, the Spirit of God breathes in, and actually not just breathes in, but fills them with ruach, with wind, with breath, and they're now able to take up the call that God has laid upon them. They stand up, says Ezekiel, a huge army. And it's significant that this represents the whole house of Israel. And the fact that it's the whole house of Israel, this is no longer just Judah. This is also including the lost tribes of the north as well. And this is very much a strong factor in Ezekiel's vision, that he sees this as being the whole land. And that the resurrection is bringing them back to their own land. And that they will know God. There will be an understanding of who God is, and they will be in their land, and there will no longer be this separation between them. And the vision goes on in chapter 37 to see two pieces of wood being fused together. It's as though Judah and Israel in their broken state had been scattered, had been broken apart, but it says that God is going to put them back together. He's going to bring the tribes together. He's going to gather them. And he's going to give them one king, and he's make them one people. And this king is going to be the Davidic king. He's going to be in the line of King David, the looked for, promised Mashiach king, the Messiah king. The laws of God will be observed by the whole nation again. And the Lord says at the end of the chapter, I will make with you a covenant of shalom. I will make with you a brit shalom, a covenant of prosperity, of peace, of well-being, of wholeness. There's going to be something beautiful about what God is doing for these people. And he says, my holy name will be honoured. Here's this thing of the sanctification of God's name again. God's name will be honoured in this new unity, in this new coming together of a spirit-filled Israel. And then going on into chapter 38, Ezekiel turns his attention to a nation which is called Gog, in the land of Magog. Now, we're not clear exactly which land this is, and there are actually many nations referred to in this chapter 38. Nations from North Africa, nations from the north of Asia. What we do seem to understand from this is a gathering together of nations that is in the future that will come against this re-established Israel, and this Israel filled with the Spirit of God. And as they come against Israel, they intend to overrun Israel, because Israel is living open and unprotected in a sense in the peace of God, in this covenant of peace. But as we see, what God is doing is he's actually bringing the nations together to demonstrate his power, to demonstrate the power of his name. And as they attack Israel, as these nations join together, Gog and Magog, and Gog and Put and Lud and Pares and all of these other nations that are named, as they gather together, God brings terrific retribution on them and pushes them back, and God steps in power to protect his re-established Israel. So this is very much a picture for Ezekiel of a re-established Israel who's come together in faithfulness, living under this covenant of peace, this covenant of prosperity and well-being with God, and therefore God will now fight for them even if the nations gather together and come against them in hordes. It's very significant that God speaks again about this covenant of peace. Covenant is so much close to God's heart, and covenant is actually what he's pursuing in all of these words, that even though Israel has been broken, even though she's been scattered, even though Jerusalem has been burned and destroyed, God's covenant is still towards them, and he's going to renew that covenant. And of course, in Jeremiah has spoken of the new covenant that is coming, and then Jesus, Messiah, the promised king, there's going to be this breaking in of a new age that we are experiencing even today through the power of the Ruach, through the power of the Spirit. Have a very good November the 18th.